Although these 9 amigurumi hacks take 1 minute or less to implement, they've made a big impact with my amigurumi projects. Now maybe you've come across some of these already in your Ami journey, but some of these might catch you by surprise. I find hack number 9 to be especially helpful, so make sure you watch all the way to the end. Alright, let's go. This 1 minute hack is for when we need to weave in our ends. Since we often work tight stitches with amigurumi, it can be a bit snug when we're running our needle through. And when we go to pull it out, it might be challenging to pull through. Simple fix is a pair of pliers. If you're going to do this, I would recommend using a metal tapestry needle just so that way the pliers don't damage the needle. When you do this though, pull the needle away from you, not toward yourself like I was showing a moment ago. There's good odds you've seen this next 1 minute hack, but this is one I've been sleeping on, and that is to use tweezers when stuffing your amigurumi. As a quick note, I kind of commandeered these from my sister. They have this extra tooth on them. Don't use this kind. What we do is we take our stuffing, squeeze it tightly between the tweezers, go down into the project, and then open our tweezers, and that's going to kind of deposit the stuffing down in there and let the stuffing expand. This does 2 things for us. One, it makes it really easy to feed the stuffing into tight places. Secondly, it prevents the need to take a dowel or something and push down on the stuffing. When we push down on the stuffing, it's just compacting it and making it firm, but I want the stuffing to be distributed evenly and be a bit fluffy. When we use the tweezers, when we go in and then release the tweezers, see how the stuffing can fluff back up? That's what's happening inside the project, and it's just going to allow the stuffing to be more even and fluffier. For this 1 minute hack, we're going to use the power of back post stitches to create a really nice right angle on the base of our project. For this, we're going to use back post single crochet. I'm going to explain it in a little bit different of a way than I might normally talk about a back post stitch, but that's just to make it really clear what's going on. Here I have the circle that's the flat base of my Ami project, and now I want to start going up at a right angle. And I'm going to work the same number of stitches as the previous round. So to work this, I'm going to go to the next stitch in my project, and I'm going to bring the hook through the top of that stitch, but coming towards me. Normally we're going away, but this time I'm coming towards me. Then I'm going to go out the next stitch. So the stitch to the left, punch out to the back. It's going to kind of fold the project up like this. Then I'm going to work a single crochet like normal by yarning over, pulling up a loop. I'll have 2 loops on my hook, then yarn over and pull through 2. That is going to be my first stitch of the round. And now I'm going to repeat that for every stitch. So for this first single crochet, we're counting it as being worked in this stitch, even though we kind of went around both of these. So for our next stitch, we're going to consider it working right here. We've kind of already gone under there, but that's where we're going to start. So we go to the next stitch we're working in, and I'm going to insert my hook through that stitch coming towards me. Normally we go away, this time I'm coming towards me. Then go to the stitch to the left of it and insert my hook away from me. Then work a single crochet. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's my second stitch for the round. So we're going to go to that second spot where we worked, and that's where we're going to start the following stitch. So come towards you through that spot right there. I'm kind of holding my hook goofy because I don't want my thumbs blocking it. So we're coming through that stitch towards us, then the stitch to the left of it, push our hook through away from us. Then work a single crochet. You'll start to see that it's creating a really crisp right edge, and it's leaving the top loops of the single crochet here at the bottom, creating a really nice visual delineation. I'm almost at the beginning of the round. Let me show you how we finish it up and also how we start the next row. As with any crochet project, it's important that we do what we always say we do but never actually do, and that is count the number of stitches. That is really important for this method because it can be easy to get to the end and not be sure where to work. In my case, I have 2 more stitches to go, and these 2 spots are where I'm going to work. So to work my second to last one, I come up towards me in the first stitch, then away from me in the second stitch, and work a single crochet. We've kind of already worked under here with the previous stitch, but now we're going to do our next stitch that gets worked directly into there. And so this is my last stitch, so I'm going to come up towards me and then down through the next stitch, which you'll notice has the stitch marker in it indicating that this was the first stitch of this round we're working. That's okay, just go with it. And I'm going to work my single crochet. Now when I go to work my next round, I'm gonna work under the top of this stitch right here. So we kind of already went around it a little bit. Our hook's already gone under there, but we haven't truly worked a stitch in it. So this is where I'm gonna work the first stitch of the next round. And I'll just put a single crochet like normal into the top of it. Here is how this looks after working another round after that first base round. You can see just how crisp and sharp of a right angle we've been able to create with this method. Here's a look at the same stitches using the hack, not using the hack. This one I've already done some decreasing, so ignore up top here. But as you can see on the sides, this has a very sharp edge to it, whereas this is more rounded. Looking at them from the bottom, this is very flat, this is more rounded. In addition to being less rounded, the hack also creates a really defined border here. Now typically I don't use this method to just create a flat base of an amigurumi. I would if I were making like a gnome or a doorstop, but usually the way I would use this would be on things like legs. If I wanted the legs to have really flat bottoms versus being more rounded like this hack is a great option. This next trick is one I love because it takes about a minute and it saves me many minutes of sewing. And I'm that crocheter who does not like sewing things together. And so the idea here is to incorporate arms and different features while you're crocheting instead of sewing them on after the fact. So this does mean you need to have your piece crocheted before working on the main part. But once you have it made, the process is fairly simple. We're going to crochet through the arm and through the project. This particular arm has 6 stitches, so I'm going to pair them off into 3 pairs of 2 because a pair is 2, so obviously the 3 pairs are each 2. Anyways, what I want to do is I'm going to go away from me through a stitch on my arm, and then the stitch that's just before it, I'm going to go out. And so when I do this, I'm kind of pinching it in half. It's going to fold this in half. And now I've got the arm on my hook. With the arm on my hook, I'm going to go through the next stitch in my project. So that's this right here. And I'm going to insert my hook going away from me. With my hook through everything, I'll now work my single crochet by yarning over and pulling up through everything. So I have just the 2 loops on my hook, and then yarn over and pull through 2. So that's my first pair of stitches. Now we will go to the next pair of stitches. So a stitch on the front and the next stitch on the back. Go through both of them with my hook. Then go to my project and go through the next stitch on the main part of my project. And then yarn over, pull through everything. Got 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 to finish the single crochet. In this particular instance, I have 1 more pair, so I will go through the stitch in the front, go through the stitch in the back. This tail piece, I'm just going to throw it to the inside of the body. And now that I've got my arm stitches, I'm going to go through the body, and you guessed it, work a single crochet. Now with this particular arm, I had an even pair of stitches. If you have an odd number of stitches, that's okay. Work in pairs, and then when you get to the last stitch, work under just the 1 stitch, and it'll be totally okay. But now I can keep crocheting the body, and I won't have to worry about sewing the arm later on in the project. And personally, that saves me a lot of time. Another reason why I really like crocheting the arms on versus sewing them on is they tend to turn out better. This is the one where I crocheted the arms on. Also, I feel like I situated them kind of low. We're not gonna worry about this. I'm calling it my little green blob guy. I don't really know what this is supposed to be. But anyways, this is the one where I crocheted the arms on. They're sitting the way I want them to. They're lined up nicely with the rounds of the body. The one that I sewed on, for some reason his arms are like up in the air, which is kind of cute, but was not what I was going for. They kind of want to stick way out, and I just can't get these positioned the way I wanted because I'm not very good at sewing. This helps me avoid sewing, which means not only do I avoid a task I don't enjoy, but I also get better results. My next 1-minute amigurumi hack probably takes a little bit longer than a minute, and it's the only one that requires extra tools, but I still thought I'd include it because it is pretty quick. I hang on to all my yarn scraps for stuffing other projects. And for this trick, instead of just stuffing the yarn as is, we're going to fluff it up using carding brushes. I have 2 piles here with the same amount of yarn. This is the leftover fringe from the crochet pants that I made. That was a fun project, go check that video out. But the basic idea is the carding brushes will fluff up the yarn fibers. The first step is to take your yarn scraps and cut them kind of small. You do not have to be precise with this, and this probably is very different than if you were actually trying to card something to spin it, but the smaller we cut it, the quicker this process is going to be. Once I have it cut down, I'll just kind of pat it into my carding brush. Then I'll grab my second brush and start fluffing. Again, if you were carding to actually spin, you'd probably need more precise techniques, but this is really simple, just fluff it up. We can see it already starting to get fluffy, and something I can do is I can bring the brushes together like this and kind of pick up the fluff from the one brush, move it back to the first one, and card some more. You can repeat as much as you would like until your yarn is as fluffy as you would like. But the result from carding is instead of having this compact amount of fiber, we now have fluffy, voluminous fiber that will give better loft to our amigurumi projects. In addition to being a great way to use what we already have and thus saving on resources and on money, another thing I really like about this is I can card stuffing as I need it, and when I don't need it, I can keep it in yarn form, which is more compact and thus smaller to store. If you're new to my channel, I wanted to briefly say hi, my name is Amanda and you're watching Crafters Autonomous, where I give you the knowledge and the confidence to craft it yourself. If you're enjoying these ideas, please leave a thumbs up on the video. It really helps out my channel and I appreciate it so much. Then go check out my playlist of crochet hacks for more great ideas. Alright, let's get back into it. For this next 1-minute hack, I was a goober and either forgot to film, thought I was filming and didn't hit record, or filmed it and deleted my footage. So I'm going to show this on this doofy little piece here, but you'll also see some footage later on showing it on the actual project. This hack is a way to create better necks. It does two things. It makes the neck a little sturdier so it's less likely to be floppy, and it creates a more crisp transition from going in from the body and then back out to the head. To do this, we will work a round of back loop only slip stitches after we've finished our decreasing and before the round where we do our increasing. Before I do anything else, I like to place a stitch marker in the front loop of my first stitch of the previous round and one in the front loop only of the last stitch of the round. You don't have to mark them, but I find this step to be helpful later on. To work this round, I'm going to place one slip stitch in the back loop of every stitch of the previous round. So here I've marked the front loop. That means the back loop is that part that's unworked. I'm going to insert my hook underneath it, yarn over, and pull that strand through everything on my hook to work a slip stitch. Then go to my next stitch and work a slip stitch under just the back loop. For me, the previous round had 13 stitches, so that means for this round, I'm going to work 13 slip stitches in the back loops only. One slip stitch in the back loop of each stitch from the previous round. I'm getting to the end of my back loop only slip stitch round. I've got 2 more stitches left, so a slip stitch under the back loop of this stitch. And then this is the marker of the last stitch of the round. It's under the front loop. And so that unworked back loop is where I'm going to put the last slip stitch for this round. It's going to look a little something like this, kind of weird, that's okay. Now that I've finished the slip stitch round by working one slip stitch in every stitch of the previous round, we're going to start working the next row of whatever pattern we're following. So this will be the row where we start increasing to shape the head. And to work this round, we're not going to work on those slip stitches, but we're going to work in these unworked front loops from 2 rounds below. So it might look kind of funky at the moment, but once we start working, it's all going to blend in. For the particular project I'm working, my first stitch is a single crochet. So I'm going to work that into the first unworked front loop from 2 rounds below. And this is why it's helpful to place the stitch marker, because now I can see exactly where I need to start. And I will go underneath that loop, so just under the front loop, and work my single crochet. With my pattern, it calls for a single crochet increase next. So I'm not going to work in the slip stitch, but I'm going to work in this next unworked front loop from 2 rounds below. So come to that strand right there and work an increase. And the reason I'm working an increase here is because that's what my pattern calls for. So the slip stitch round you kind of do as an extra thing within the pattern. And anyways, at this point, I will just keep following my pattern, working around in those front loop only, those unworked front loops from 2 rounds below. So here I am nearing the end of my round. This is where it's helpful to have that marker in the last unworked front loop, because that's just going to make sure I work in every stitch and don't miss anything. So my project calls for an increase in each of these last 2 stitches. And so that's my last unworked front loop. I'll take the stitch marker out and work whatever stitches into that unworked front loop that my pattern tells me to. From here, I'll keep on following the instructions for my pattern. Again, stitch markers are very helpful. Here I marked the first stitch of this round I just worked, so now I know exactly where to go as I start this next round, because it does kind of get a little bit funky looking here until we get it established. But from here, I can get back to following the pattern. Here's a quick look at the top-down view after working this. It's going to add some stiffness to our project, some extra sturdiness, and create a really crisp transition from where the body goes in and where the head starts going out. You can see how much tighter that opening is pulled, whereas where we didn't do the back loop slip stitch, it's a lot more open. What these slip stitches do is they take up some of the slack. So on this amigurumi, it's not particularly stiff, it's got a bit of give, and you might see a little bit more gapping where we do those increases. With the back loop, it's a lot more stiff, and so of course it's still going to have some give, but it's not going to have quite as much lean and wobble to it as the old opening. It also means that while we might still have gaps where we do the increases, we're not going to see through to the stuffing because the chain stitch is right behind it. The other thing that I really like about this is it creates this really crisp transition from the body to the head. Here it's all a little more flowy and we kind of don't really have a chin. It's kind of just the neck and the chin and the head all flow together. Here you can see that really crisp break between the head and the neck. So this is another great trick to add to your amigurumi toolkit. This next 1 minute fix is for when we are embroidering on our amigurumi projects. So I want to add a little smiley mouth to my project, and let's say I want it to go here and then have a bar going across the bottom. I can easily go in here, but trying to get it to come out the exact spot that I need it to on the other side can be a little bit tricky. So the trick here is we're going to go out of a random hole instead of trying to get the entry and exit point of our stitch exactly right. Let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to go back, say here, and run the needle on out through the project. That actually looks so adorable like that. Then I know that I want this end to come out here. So now I will go back through where I came out. And because I'm further away, it's a little bit easier to navigate and get my needle coming out exactly where I want it to come out. And then I can go in here, and maybe I want to add another side to this, but I'm not quite sure how I want that to look. So again, I'm just going to find another random stitch and come out through there. The one thing that's really important here is when you exit your project, make sure that you are not splitting any threads. We want it to be a gap between the stitches, like where we worked a stitch, so at a base. And then go on out. So now when I want to precisely exit over here, I'll go back in at the random spot where I exited, and now I have plenty of flex room to get my needle to come out exactly where I want the top of the mouth to go. So let's try right in here and see how this looks. And then I'll finish off like normal, where I go out the same hole where I started and tie it off. Before I started doing this, I used to spend so much time trying to line up both the entry and the exit of all my embroidery details. But once I started going out randomly further away, it meant that for each stitch, I could focus on just one part, just the entry or just the exit of the detail I wanted to embroider. Again, the most important thing is when you exit, make sure you're not splitting the yarn because you need to go back through exactly in the same spot. It's kind of the same concept of when we run both of our tails out through our project to tie them off like this and then hide them inside. We need to make sure we're not catching the fibers so we can pull the tails to the inside. Our next 1 minute hack is a way to add details while avoiding embroidering. Our secret, the simple colored pencil. Kind of the classic detailing to add here is rosy cheeks. And I only recently tried this and I was surprised at how well it transferred. I like to go nice and light because we can always layer it up more. If I find it's too much, I can also rub a little bit of it off and get it to lighten. But we're literally just going to color on our project. It's that simple. We can also add details to the eyes. I'm going to give some eyebrows just to kind of give it a happy, cheery expression. And personally, I find this a way easier way to add things like eyebrows than sewing something on. So cute. This last 1-minute hack is a way to easily add safety eyes, and all you need is a hard straw. If you're familiar with the Starbucks reusable cups, it'll be a straw kind of like from one of those containers. Obviously doesn't have to be Starbucks brand, but I mentioned that just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Instead of putting on a safety eye without a tool and having to try to get things lined up and do it by hand, we can put the back around the peg of the safety eye, place our project eye down on a hard surface. I like using the carpet, but I'm using the back of a notebook just so I can get it on camera. And then put the straw on it and press down firmly. That might have seemed a little more challenging. That's because I've got a soft pillow underneath the book. If you do it on the carpet, it works really quickly. If you do it on the carpet, you might pick up a little bit of carpet fuzz, so it can be a good idea to put a piece of fabric or a tissue down before you do it. But personally, if I catch any carpet fuzz, I'm fine just cutting it off. You, of course, can use a bigger straw for bigger safety eyes. The only requirement on the straw is it needs to be big enough to go around the peg, small enough to not go over the edge of the back of the eye, and sturdy enough to handle some pressure. If you have a hard time gripping things and the straw is too thin, you can slide a stress ball onto here to give yourself something bigger to hold onto and not need to have as tight of a grip on the small straw. Which hack was your favorite? I would love to hear in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and happy crafting.